My friends at Easy Cater are workplace catering pros, helping you find food for everything from daily employee meals to staff meetings and special events. Visit easycater.com/leaderassistant to find out more.
Hi, I'm Amanda Christoff. Today's leadership quote comes from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
The Leader Assistant podcast exists to encourage and challenge assistants to become confident, game-changing leader assistants.
Thank you for listening to the Leader Assistant Podcast. Welcome to episode 75.
Hey friends, thanks for tuning in. If you're looking for affordable professional development training specifically for you, an executive assistant, administrative professional, virtual assistant, check out our live events at leaderassistantlive.com. I will share a link in the show notes as well at leaderassistant.com/75. But just wanted to encourage you to check out our upcoming schedule of events at leaderassistantlive.com. Enjoy this interview. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Leader Assistant Podcast. It's your host, Jeremy Burrows, and today I'm excited to be speaking with Amanda Christoff. Amanda is the CEO and founder of Bloom Talent. Amanda, how's it going?
It's going good. Nice to talk to you, Jeremy, and thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, so what part of the world are you in today?
I am in San Francisco, California, in a neighborhood called Coal Valley, actually, today.
So let's talk about your first job. What was your first job, and what skills did you learn in that role that maybe you still use today running a recruiting firm?
Yeah, so when I graduated college, I was really drawn to the nonprofit space because I really wanted to help people, and I just felt called to that. And so I actually worked with a breast cancer organization that put on fundraising walks to raise money for breast cancer. And in that job, it was actually very similar to recruiting in that I was recruiting people to do the event and then helping them along the way with their fundraising. So it was a lot of, communicating and helping people throughout their process, which was about 6 months, and, getting them to the finish line and kind of being that support person along the way. And so it was actually very complementary to what I do today in recruiting.
Where'd you go from there, and why did you decide to start your own firm?
Yeah, so one of my colleagues at the breast cancer organization had a friend in recruiting and thought that we would be really good partners. And so I didn't know that much actually about recruiting and met with her and learned a lot and realized, wow, this is definitely something I'm excited about. I've always been a people person, and I've always enjoyed helping people, and it just sort of seemed like the perfect fit on both of those realms. And so I joined an agency and was sort of brought in as a coordinator to help her. And she was really my mentor and got me going. And within, I think, 6 months, I was promoted into recruiting and was there for, just a little under 5 years before I realized, I really want to do this on my own terms and create my own agency and hire my own people and really do it the way I like to do. And it was a really great foundation to work for this other agency because it really helped me learn so much about the business. But I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit and really wanted to try it on my own. And here we are 5 years later, still going very strong at Bloom Talent.
Awesome. So why did you choose to specifically focus on chiefs of staff and executive assistants?
Yeah, so when I started recruiting, this was actually the team that I worked on, and I quickly realized that it was the perfect space for me to recruit because it's really relationship recruiting where you're really connecting with people and understanding, because executive assistants and chief of staffs, they're naturally drawn to wanting to help people as well. And a lot of what makes a successful hire is a personality match along with the skill match. And I really enjoy that part of recruiting, which is learning about somebody and really getting to know them on a personal level and then helping them get matched with the right person. And so I quickly realized like this was the space for me. And, it wasn't just a transactional sort of style of recruiting. It was very much relationship based.
Yeah, it's a very unique relationship, as you said, with EAs and their executives, and so yeah, you definitely have to know the person a little more than just their resume.
Yes, and a lot of it is built on trust and loyalty, and it takes years to kind of build that relationship. And that's just been always. And I also really believe that executive assistants really help run companies and make things happen. They're so invaluable to an organization that I just feel lucky that I get to help them find great roles and also help companies find people that help, executives take it to the next level because they have someone they can trust that's going to help them get there.
So can you tell us a story of a time when you placed someone and it didn't work out?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, luckily at Bloom Talent, that doesn't happen very often because we spend so much time on the forefront, really trying to get to know the person. But I think when that can happen is when somebody reveals themselves differently in an interview than they do in the job. And you realize when you get into the job that, wow, this is just not a match. And it can kind of work on both sides. Maybe the executive assistant didn't present themselves in the most transparent way or the executive, or, things change. I think when I've seen it happen before is when we place an EA in a role and they're super excited to support the COO. And then unfortunately the COO leaves after a month due to personal reasons, and they're redirected to somebody else in the company. And that personality match just doesn't fit. And that's not why they joined the role in the company. They joined to support this one person. And so that's typically how, when things don't work out, is what I see. And then of course there's other sort of situations that can happen, but I would say commonly that's what happens.
So on the assistant side, what's one of the biggest mistakes an assistant can make when they are crafting their resume?
To be honest, I can't believe how many resumes I still see with errors. So if you're an executive assistant, someone's hiring you to be another set of eyes and to be their detail oriented, because a lot of times an executive is moving through the day very quickly, right? And they need this person to dot their I's and cross their T's. And so if your resume has, like, one of my biggest pet peeves is when people's dates are not formatted correctly, meaning like one is way on the left, one is kind of in the middle of the page, one is on the far right, or they're not quite all lined up. And to me, that's just a red flag. I mean, if you're trying to interview, and put your best foot forward, you would want to show that you're a detail-oriented person and that you care about delivering, a product that you've really spent time on. So, it doesn't have to be, I always say too, that make sure that when you're sending a resume, one, dates line up, that there's no errors, that punctuation, like not, some people have like periods in one job and then periods not in the next, so just being very mindful of that, but also being mindful that very short answers kind of don't show that you have a full understanding of the job. So having a little meat in the resume without it being too wordy is also important, because people want to see that, you were able to sort of articulate well all of the things that you've done in the job, and doing that so much so that it shows that you had like a meaty role. And I think the way you write your resume shows that.
So what's another tip just in general for assistants or chief of staffs that are looking for a new job?
Well, I think first and foremost, especially if you've done the EA role, once or twice already, or you're very senior, I think first and foremost, really owning like what kind of assistant are you and what kind of personality type do you like to support, and sitting with yourself and asking that. Like, I prefer to be incredibly prescriptive, meaning like I like driving. I like making the decisions. I like giving the advice, or I prefer somebody that drives and I just kind of make the to-do list and I follow up with them and I'm like their person, And so really knowing your personality type, because when you know that and you know your style, and also you know what kind of organization you like to work in. Do you like to work with a team of EAs? Do you like to be the sole EA? Do you like to support multiple people, or do you like to have one person that you support? Those are really important factors when you're thinking about getting a job. So thinking through that, and then when you come to me, being very clear about that. So then it makes it super easy for me to say, perfect, I have 3 jobs that are perfect for you. This is why: the personality fit, the company size, the type of role. But if you come to an interview and you say, I'm open, that's great. But oftentimes when you really dial down, like what you actually enjoy in the job, there are specifics and preferences that you have. So I think it's good to think about that before you dive into a job search.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. It's nice to know yourself and know your own preferences and know what you work well, or the type of people you work well with and the type of people you don't work well with.
It's so important because, like, for instance, a thing that we see a lot in San Francisco is you're starting to see a lot of CEOs that are previous engineers, and they have often, not to categorize them all into the same bucket, but I do notice a pattern in like a CEO that's more engineering focused versus perhaps sales focused. And, their working styles and even the way that they like the interview style to go and the way people respond to questions is different. So it's helpful to even know that. Like, is there a type of profile within an organization that I get along with? There's some EAs that come to me and they say, I love supporting, more engineering, analytical type of people. Others say, I like to support more of like a business sales type of personality. And so, and being able to ask yourself that question, like, well, why? What is it about that style of leadership attracts you? How do you interact with that style of leadership? That's going to help you find such a great job the more you dive into that.
So what types of questions do you like to ask when you're interviewing assistants, or that you've heard or seen other executives ask in interviews?
Well, one of the things that comes up for me a lot, because I tend to work with a lot of startups, and one of the biggest things that comes up for me when I'm talking to CEOs about what kind of EA they want. They really want EAs that take ownership. They have a lot of things on their plate. They're trying to raise another round of funding. They're building a team. So having an EA that can take ownership of their role, their responsibilities, and come in with like a framework of how they support the executive is really crucial. And so what I like to do is I always ask open-ended questions, because I like the person to sort of guide the conversation versus me just asking yes or no questions, because I don't get a lot from that. But what I find, if I ask an open-ended question, if somebody gives me a vague response, I will continue to, well, tell me more about that. Well, what do you mean by that? Can you give me an example? And I really appreciate people that can give very specific examples. And that's something that's been coming up a lot in our interviews on why clients have been passing on candidates, is they want specific answers around, well, how do you organize a calendar? Or how would you let me know if something was urgent and needed my attention? Or, how would you go about responding to this? The more specific people are, the more that builds that trust and familiarity. And so when I'm interviewing people, I'm really trying to vet for that up front so that I can, and if people aren't very specific, that's actually feedback I give to people, because it's not going to help if they're vague in interviews.
I always have a hard time thinking. I haven't had to do many interviews, thankfully. I've had good luck getting with the executives that I'm in, but I've always thought, well, I know what to do, but describing and explaining what you do to somebody else is not an easy task always.
Mm-hmm. Well, and sometimes like you're the EA, you're the expert, right? Like, so a lot of times these executives are like, you walk me through how you do your job because you're the expert and and I kind of want you to take care of me or show me, lead for me. So the more specific you are, the more they're like, great, this person knows exactly what they're doing. I can already envision how they work. I trust that, let's move forward. And it really speeds up the interview process, actually.
So let's talk a little bit about compensation. And the first question I want to ask is, why do you think executives and companies and HR departments struggle to pay assistants more?
Well, I think that I'm seeing a shift in San Francisco, at least, which is really positive, that assistants are getting paid more. But I think that there's a lack of information or a lack of just awareness around everything that an EA does, because an EA a lot of times is working behind the scenes. And sometimes they're on their own island. They're not working on a team, so they don't have people advocating for them other than their executive, who, again, like part of their job is to basically look like everything is smooth sailing and easy, but really we all know behind the scenes that they're running around, having to do all of this stuff to make their executive's life, run seamlessly throughout the day. So I think, there's sometimes a lack of knowledge. And I think also, I'm starting to see this more and more, which is great, that there's like, even like what you're doing with sort of advocating and creating awareness around, no, when you're in the negotiation phase in an offer, sell yourself, like, sell your value add. And I think, I think sometimes what I see is EAs don't push back in a negotiation or like upfront. They want to seem flexible and, not like they're not asking for too much. So in the beginning, maybe they're not setting themselves up. And that's where I think more education to companies and clients is helpful to know what the market's paying, why this person is asking for this salary. It's because of X, Y, and Z. A lot of times there's really not a boundary around like, these are the hours that they're working. They're kind of always on. And that comes at a cost. And I think what I find is if a client really pushes back on salary, they don't really have a full understanding of the role. And that's where you have to really go in. But I've been lucky, and most of my clients, they'll give a ballpark of like, this is the max I can pay, which is helpful for me to know. But a lot of them are very open to being educated on, because they want to be fair and they want this person to feel good starting in the role. So I think it's because also the role has changed a lot. It's gone from being less transactional and a lot more strategic and really being a right hand. And so there's that shift. And with that shift, more education needs to happen in order for them to really understand how much they need to pay for this role.
Yeah. So what are maybe one or two specific examples or tips or tricks that assistants can use to negotiate for a higher compensation package during that interview process?
Well, so one of the best tactics you can always use is when somebody feels as though they may lose you, they want to come in at a number that's going to sell you on the company. So I think it's always healthy to let people know, hey, I'm actively interviewing. And this is what I'm interviewing for with a couple other companies. So if a company is kind of lowballing you, you could always say like, thank you. I appreciate that, but I'm actually interviewing with another company that's looking to pay me X. So that's really the range that I'm targeting. And therefore you don't need to necessarily just say like, this is what I want, but instead it kind of, it allows you to say, this is what I'm targeting. And this is what actually other companies are offering, which then makes companies feel like, wow, I don't want to be the low baller. And also, wow, you're interviewing other places. Okay, well, I need to speed this up. Let's make an offer that's competitive. Competition really inspires, I think, a good offer. So that would be a tactic that I would use. Another too, if you get an offer that was less than you were hoping to make and or didn't come in exactly around what you were looking for, you can always push back. And I think, a way that I always like to say is, I appreciate your offer, and I'm hoping there's some wiggle room, because when I'm crunching the numbers of what cost of living and expenses, like I really need to make X in order to make things work. And so I'm hoping you can meet me there. And I find that that's also, because a client doesn't want to necessarily put an employee out and hurt their cost of living. And if they can't meet you, then they can't meet you. But it's definitely an angle that I think also works.
So let's talk a little bit about you personally. And you've run your business for, you say 5 years, is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever experienced burnout?
So it's funny you asked me this, and I will say yes. I've had bouts of burnout before, but I would say the first time I really experienced burnout was last year. We went through some changes last year. I had some life changes. I had a baby. I could not work at the pace that I was working before I had a child, and had to sort of change some things up. But then last year, I sort of took on a lot again, and myself, as I was sort of thinking through the business, and I was running on a lot of adrenaline, which I enjoy, but there's only a certain amount of adrenaline in your body before you reach a maximum capacity. And so that happened to me last year. It was just like all of a sudden, you're getting enough sleep, you're exercising, but you're just so tired. You could barely get through the day, and you could barely think clearly, and your mind's in a fog. And that's when, I kind of realized, okay, I need to rebalance my time and my energy. And I was noticing what was contributing to my burnout was I was being too reactionary instead of carving out time for proactive, brain thinking, creative time. So one of the solutions I created around that was to go back to block scheduling, where, I can anticipate the energy I need to put into certain tasks because I'm blocking out my schedule versus just allowing my schedule to be reactionary, meaning jumping on calls with people, jumping on calls with clients when they need me, responding right away to emails. But instead kind of carving out more time so it's not in that reactionary function. And then also, I know a lot of people say this, but really what helped me a lot was getting back into my meditation practice and kind of clearing my mind of noise, and then getting back into a routine where I was doing that every morning really helped me to get back into my zone and get out of burnout.
I burned out in my last gig and kind of took some time off in between jobs, and everyone experiences it at some point, in my opinion, and it's just a matter of how extreme or how long or how hard you fall, basically. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing your kind of tips. Those are good tips on coming out of it.
Yeah, it's, and it creeps up on you. You don't realize it because you're flying high and you're just in work and you're just working. And then all of a sudden it just kind of happens. And so I think it's important that I think in a very reactionary job, I think EAs are in the same boat, very reactionary, taking ownership of your own schedule and creating blocks, I think is just super helpful, because I think that helps you reboot your energy. So you fill your bucket back up versus just completely depleting it. And so I learned that very well last year.
Nice. So let's shift back to assistants for a second. So how can assistants grow existing skills, develop new skills, and really ultimately own the role of being a strategic partner?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I actually had an EA that I talked to, recently that I think very highly of. And she actually has sought out, there's some great programs that are developing among, fellow EAs, like courses you can take, groups where, there's like a course you can take and or a community you can be a part of where, let's say you're in different situations or you're wanting to grow and you're not sure how to sort of ask for that promotion. There's a lot of subgroups now offering support, specifically in the EA space. So I know that she took a course with this organization called like Office Ninjas and took a lot away from it. And I guess they had all different types of like tools and workshops to continue to grow in the career and takeaways. And you had to be invited to this, but she really spoke highly of that. And so I think, and then, a couple of my other clients and candidates have created subgroups like on Slack, and it's kind of almost like a support group where you can bounce ideas off of each other. And it's a smaller group that you have to be invited into, but I think they're very inclusive, but you kind of have to be an EA to be in it. And I think that's a great opportunity to share and understand what's going on. And I think, there are a lot of leadership. Like, I think one of the things that I'm hearing from EAs a lot is, I want to take on more. I want to take on more ownership. How do I get from strategic EA to chief of staff? And really that jump is, operational leadership and taking on ownership of more strategic projects. And so if you're finding like, I need more education on that space, oftentimes CEOs will say, go do a leadership education day or take a course and we'll pay for it, because they want to enhance if it's going to make you stronger in your job, they'll support that. And so I would encourage EAs to continually look out for those courses and to take them and ask your boss to pay for them, because it's only going to make you better at your job.
Totally agree. Definitely have your executive pay for it.
Yes. You do not need to pay for it. Your executive, the cool thing about, at least in Silicon Valley, a lot of offers now pay, they have a stipend in the offer for educational funds. Like, they'll pay for you to go out and do learning and development. And that's part of the offer. So.
Yeah. Awesome. So if you could snap your fingers and instantly give all assistants more of something, what would it be?
I would give them more education on tools. I think we're in a rapidly growing technology space where there's like so many amazing hack tools on time management, email hacking. Like, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's not do things manually. Like, if there are tools out there that are fairly reasonable, like, let's get you onboarded on these tools. I think there's just not enough time in the day to learn the tools or even figure out what are the tools. So if there was like a group of people that created hacks specifically for EAs, I would love to snap my fingers and just offer that to people, because I think that would give them a lot more bandwidth and also potentially help reduce burnout. Great.
So, Amanda, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to share your tips and wisdom and story from a recruiter's perspective. I love hearing all different types of perspectives on the show. So really appreciate you and the time you've given. So where can we find you all online, and how can we support what you're up to?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeremy, for having me. I feel lucky to be here. So you can find us online. Our website is bloomtalent.io. We're also on Instagram at bloomtalentsf, also on Facebook. And, in terms of support, we're always looking to connect with fabulous executive assistants, chief of staff assistants, anyone in the space. And you can always email us at hi@bloomtalent.io. And we, are always happy to meet new people. And if we can help you in your job search, I think one of the areas that, we're locally based in San Francisco, but I know my goal for the next, coming years is to really try and bring in more remote opportunities. I think there's so many amazing EAs that could do this from home. And so, as I'm building this network of remote folks, love to connect with anyone in the United States. And feel free to check out our website. We do have resources on there, and you can always check out our jobs.
Perfect. Well, I'll put those on the show notes so people can get to you more easily. And yeah, thanks so much again. Good luck to you, and hopefully we can meet in person someday in sunny San Francisco.
Yes. And I just would say, if there's any listeners that are based in San Francisco, that's the majority of our jobs right now. So feel free to always reach out to us. But thank you, and would love to meet you, Jeremy, the next time you're out here in San Francisco.
Thanks again, Amanda. Great tips on interviewing, resumes, and negotiation, and avoiding burnout. You can check out the show notes at leaderassistant.com/75 to reach out to Bloom Talent and Amanda. And we will talk to you next time.
Please review on Apple Podcasts. GoBulls.com